wherever you like. Okay, so this is the lineup for the session. We have Harry Kamian, who is the Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary for Energy in the US Bureau of Energy Resources in the US State Department, who'll be joining by video connection. And we have Kostas Skrekas, who is the Minister of Environment and Energy of Greece, will also be joining by a video connection from the Netherlands. He's in the Netherlands with the Prime Minister, Mitsotakis. We have a video message, which we will play at some point in the proceedings, from Natasa, Pilides, the Minister of Energy and Commerce and Industry of Cyprus, and also the President of the EastMed Gas Forum. And Natasha's about to give birth, so she thought it best maybe not to join in person. But we will be definitely hearing from her because she's prepared a special message for us. Then we have Niki, Tzavela, former member of the European Parliament of Greece, who we heard a little earlier asking a question. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Rikard Scouias, non-executive chairman of Hellenic Hydrocarbon Resources Management Greece. So it's great to have all of you with us, and we're going to hear from, first of all, from Harry Kamian, and the Minister will have a bit of a Q&A, and then I will bring you two into the discussion also, and we'll be open to questions from the floor. So let's get started, and let's go to our two speakers. Welcome, Harry Kamian.
Thank you.
I hope you can hear us okay.
I can hear you well, Joan. How about you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, excellent. Yes, thank you very much for taking the time to join our very important discussion today. I believe you're going to give us your thoughts for 5 minutes or so to kick off the discussion.
Great. Thank you very much. And it's an honor and a privilege to participate in the event with such a distinguished group of panelists. And my apologies in advance for not being able to participate in person. Putin's brutal war of choice on Ukraine poses considerable challenges for global energy security. It highlights the need for Europe's energy independence through a clean energy transition and the importance of regional cooperation to meet these challenges. The United States government is actively working with our allies and partners to address these challenges and to support efforts to accelerate the energy transition. This strong U.S. commitment extends to the Eastern Mediterranean region, where we have witnessed how regional cooperation can enhance nations' energy security. Today, I wish to highlight one example of such regional cooperation where the United States government is playing an active role, and that is the 3+1 format. The 3+1 format involving the Republic of Cyprus, Greece, Israel, and the United States is a format that is designed to promote peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. Earlier this month, Secretary of State Blinken affirmed the strong U.S. support for the 3+1 format during a virtual foreign ministerial meeting with his counterparts from these countries. There, the foreign ministers reaffirmed their shared commitment and agreed to develop a roadmap with tangible deliverables for the coming year. Energy is one key component of the 3+1. We see the 3+1 format as an important mechanism to advance our mutual interests of energy security through increased regional integration and decarbonization to achieve our climate ambitions. Last year, we hosted the first meeting of the Renewables Energy Working Group, and we look forward to deepening our discussions later this summer. We're also looking forward to our Greek partners hosting discussions on energy infrastructure in June. This is an area where we believe electricity interconnections can bolster the region's energy security. The United States government supports the efforts by the countries of the Eastern Mediterranean to physically interconnect the Eastern Mediterranean energy to Europe. Electricity interconnections to Europe will link Eastern Mediterranean countries to each other and to Europe. It will allow for future exports of electricity produced by renewable energy sources and benefit the nations of the region. In our view, regional cooperation through mechanisms such as the 3+1 are even more critical now in view of Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the threat this represents to our collective security including our energy security. In closing, I wish to reiterate the United States government is strongly committed to working with allies and partners in the Eastern Mediterranean region to meet these challenges and to address our shared energy security needs. Thank you very much, and I look forward to participating in this afternoon's discussion.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're going to go straight now to Kostas Skrekas, and then we'll open up to a bit of discussion and conversation. Okay. Okay. The minister is not yet connected, so we'll connect when we can. Maybe this is a moment then to hear from Natasa Pilides, and at least then Mr. Kamian will be able to hear what she's got to say. So maybe we can listen to that video message.
Participants in New York and everyone connected digitally from around the world, a very good afternoon. I would like to begin my short address by thanking the organizers of today's summit, Hazliz and Rizvas, and of course the Economist, for the kind invitation to address today's summit. Although I was unfortunately not able to join in person, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to address this prestigious annual event from afar, as it provides an excellent opportunity to join good colleagues and close partners in presenting the crucial role that the East Med can play towards mitigating the effects of the ongoing energy crisis in Europe. Having worked hard over the past few years to build concrete multilateral energy partnerships in the region, Cyprus and our neighbouring countries share the belief that we can help the EU in its efforts to phase out its dependency on Russian gas, and at the same time maintain a firm handle on its ambitious response to climate change. Through coordinated and collective action, and with the support of the US, we are confident we can secure for the Union alternative sources and routes so that we can contribute as the East Med Energy Corridor to this huge effort that is currently happening. And that, of course, includes the synergies that are required for viably exploiting both our hydrocarbon and renewable resources in Cyprus and, of course, those in the area. As I have mentioned, the mechanisms to achieve this are already in place. Cyprus's presidency of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, for instance, could facilitate the examination of all possible ways to better monetize the gas resources in the region, having also in mind the importance of the energy transition to a green economy and the need to safeguard this, its momentum. With gas, of course, having a vital role to play as a bridge fuel in achieving our 2030 goals, and of course the big target of net zero emissions by 2050, and as the most environmentally friendly conventional fuel, it definitely will play a part in this transition, as well as in the production of hydrogen, which is also a very important part of our strategy. We can leverage on strategic relationships with Greece, with Israel, with Egypt to engage in discussions to define a plan for alternative energy routes and sources for the needs of the EU. And this can be done by connecting our various gas fields in Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt. We're already looking at specific scenarios of how this can be done, and also finding ways to export to Europe and to encourage the companies active in our respective EEZs to expedite their procedures, particularly in Cyprus. This is something that we very much want to engage in with the companies, and we have had quite a positive response from all of the companies operating within our EEZ, with very constructive discussions to this end. Cyprus does have the potential to export up to about 15 to 20 BCM of gas per year to Europe in the next decade, depending, of course, on the development options of current and future discoveries. In total, between Cyprus, Israel, and Egypt, more than 2,100 BCM have been discovered since the 2009 Tamar discovery. And of these, around 500 BCM are estimated to still be available for exports. It's also important that most of the oil and gas majors active in the East Mediterranean are operating projects in all our EEZs. So this certainly creates the opportunity for synergies that can be exploited towards common infrastructure, but also a sustainable regional gas market. And of course, the role of the EU is crucial, both in facilitating this and also in acting as an important client in the future. Recently, the EastMed has also become much more proactive in pursuing and enhancing goals for the green transition, of course, as part of the Green Deal. Cyprus, Greece, Israel and Egypt are all progressing with very important RES projects, some of which are common, such as the electricity cable, for example, between Israel, Cyprus and Greece, as well as a second electricity cable between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece. So in the next 5 to 10 years, regional electricity interconnections could actually become a reality, and that opens up opportunities, huge opportunities for the export of renewable energy to Europe as well. All of the countries involved are committed to making these key infrastructure projects a reality. We have agreed on bilateral, trilateral memoranda of understanding which map out our next steps. And based on the provisions of these memoranda, we have also proceeded with the formation of technical committees of national experts which are meeting on a regular basis to ensure that timeframes are being kept and to also facilitate the licensing processes in the different countries. Dear participants, I will not take up any more of your time. I would like to reiterate the point that geopolitical turmoil caused by the Russian invasion in the Ukraine, as well as the challenges posed by the ongoing pandemic, do present, as unfortunate as they are, of course, do present an opportunity within the EastMed region. However, we need to protect and safeguard the momentum for the green transition and really integrate natural gas into the holistic strategic plan for our transition from fossil fuels to a net zero environment. I believe that we can leverage on the very solid collaboration that we already have to achieve these goals, and that the EU can also benefit from this by having alternative sources of energy from the EastMed. Wishing you all a very successful conference, and hopefully we'll see you in person very soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's very good to get the perspective from Cyprus, even if Natasha Pilides couldn't be with us in person. We're going to try again now to connect with Minister Skrekas. I believe that we're going to try and get a sound connection at the very least, even if we cannot see the minister. So we may not have an image. So let's try once again.
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can. Okay. We can indeed hear you. Thanks so much, Minister Skrekas, for joining us. I know you're really busy on your trip with the Prime Minister in the Netherlands. So it's great to have you. Even if we can't see you, we can hear you. So I will ask you now to make a few opening remarks, and then we can have a discussion. Thank you.
Okay, let me say that indeed it is a very adventurous connection. So I really apologize that I cannot be with you in person, and also I apologize that you cannot see me through my video camera. It's true that currently I'm in the Netherlands in the European People's Party conference, where we are going to vote for the new president. It is the larger political party in Europe, the EPP. So let me thank you again for the invitation. I think that This event is taking place in New York in very difficult and very tough times. We have a devastating war which threatens our society, our civilization. I think that the world is totally different since the beginning of this war, and we cannot be sleepwalkers. We cannot let people taking initiatives that are against our principles, the principles of democracy, of solidarity, of equality, of freedom. So I think that we have to be united in this, in the same direction. This devastating war that has created, of course, a humanitarian catastrophe on one hand. On the other hand, has also fed a tremendous energy crisis in Europe, and not only in Europe. So currently we're suffering of huge increases in the prices of natural gas and in the electricity prices in Europe because of the increase in natural gas. So we have to design immediately, we have to take actions, preventive actions. We have to take actions to secure the supply of energy, and we have to take also actions in order to secure and to safeguard affordable prices for the consumers, for the households, especially for the most vulnerable households, but also for the businesses. So the first one, we strongly believe that the basic elements for a really viable energy strategy are three. First, it is energy security and security of supply. The second is the decarbonization of our energy mix. And the third, of course, is the affordable prices. So regarding the first one, let me say that currently in Greece we have taken specific actions in order to secure the supply in natural gas. So we have a regasification facility in Rebithousa near Athens with 7.5 BCM capacity. Let me tell you that Greece's annual demand is around 6.5 BCM. So currently Greece, through our regasification plant and through the TAP pipeline, this pipeline that brings gas from Azerbaijan through Greece to Italy, we are delivering almost 70 to 80% of the Bulgarian demand in natural gas every day. So currently, you know that Russia has totally interrupted the flow of natural gas to Bulgaria. So Bulgaria currently is taking 70 to 80% of its consumption from Greece. In order, of course, this to be even more viable and more sound in the future, we have already planned and we inaugurated a few weeks ago the commencement of the construction of a new FSRU, a floating storage unit, an LNG terminal north of Greece with an additional 5.5 BCM of capacity and a new interconnection pipeline, the IGB, the interconnection between Greece and Bulgaria, a pipeline with a 3 BCM capacity is going to be fully operational by the end of next month. So after the completion of those interventions, of those infrastructures, of that infrastructure, we will be able to fully support Bulgaria, and not only Bulgaria, but also northern countries from Bulgaria, even up to Ukraine. The other thing that we're designing here in Greece is the upgrading and the expansion of the electricity interconnections with Bulgaria again. We're doubling our electricity interconnection by the end of this year. With Albania, we are tripling our interconnection, electricity interconnection there. I was there a few days ago by 2030. And of course, we have the electricity interconnection, the submarine cable that will connect Greece with Cyprus, a very ambitious project which is almost ready to start being constructed, and from Cyprus to Israel. And we have another very ambitious interconnection of 3 gigawatt capacity a submarine cable that will connect Greece with Egypt and will give us the opportunity to import green energy, green electricity energy from Egypt to Greece and from Greece to the northern countries. So that is what we are preparing about the energy security and the security of supplying natural gas in the short term. Of course, we have long-term plans, and that is to, let's say, reduce our dependency from fossil fuels, from natural gas, and thus from the Russian gas. How are we going to do it? By, of course, increasing the penetration of renewables into our energy mix. Let me tell you that the last 3 years in Greece, we have deployed more than 3,500 megawatts of new renewables in Greece. That means that every year, this year, we will build and connect to the grid approximately 2,000 megawatts of new renewables. Let me say that Germany deploys every year 1,400 megawatts in total. So Greece is now has a faster pace than many larger Western European countries. We also plan, in order to be able to receive 70% of our electricity demand from renewables by 2030. Currently, 44% of our electricity demand comes from renewables currently this year. So in 2030, 70% we're going to come from renewables. We are expanding our electricity grids. We're planning 8 to 10 billion euro investments for the upgrading of the grids, of the electricity grids. We are also planning to establish 3 to 4 gigawatt of electricity storage, batteries, and hydropumping. And of course, we're planning to deploy 1 gigawatt of hydrogen electrolyzers. So renewables plus biomethane plus hydrogen will give us the opportunity to reduce dramatically the dependence from natural gas, which we currently import by 100%, and 50% of that comes from Russia. And of course, offshore wind is in our plans, and energy saving. The cheapest and the cleanest energy is the energy that we don't consume. So currently we're implementing a very ambitious renovate wave. We're going to upgrade 600,000 buildings by 2030, and we are going to reduce by 30% our energy consumption by 2030 through the energy upgrading of the buildings, through the promotion of electromobility, and of course, we have to change also our everyday behavior and culture. And this is something also that we promote. So thank you, and I leave some more time for questions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. So are you able to stay with us until 3 o'clock or something like that? 3:00?
Yes, of course.
Yes, excellent. Okay. So I guess I'm going to throw out some questions. You may want to respond, my two panelists here, to some of them. Just because I think they have to leave in 10 minutes, I'm going to ask a few questions and then ask you to give your remarks after that. So I guess the first question for both our speakers, Mr. Kamian and Minister Skrekas, is how realistic this transition is going to be. Now, first of all, about LNG and the role of LNG. That's particularly, a question for Mr. Kamian, because here there is a question of, how quickly LNG can actually play an important role in substituting for Europe's dependency on Russian gas, and at what price as well that will happen. So that's really a question, given the lack of infrastructure in Europe as a whole. Greece is much better placed and therefore is in a position where it can provide some solutions to this problem. But are the expectations around LNG realistic ones? And the second one is, how is it possible to incentivize private investors to invest in gas, this transition fuel, if the EU is committed to phasing out gas by the 2030s? And the targets have just been made even more ambitious. So there's a kind of a bit of a dilemma there. So maybe I can ask you first to come back on those questions, because I'm sure the two people sitting with me here in this room have something to say about that as well. So first of all, can I ask Mr. Kamian to come back and talk about LNG?
Yeah, John, thank you very much. I'd be happy to. As you and other colleagues there may have seen, in March, the president made a very strong announcement regarding the U.S. commitment to working with EU to help them address their short-term energy needs, including with regards to gas. Through a series of steps, quiet diplomatic engagement, and some close cooperation that we've done with the private sector, we have been able to successfully help our European colleagues address some of the short-term needs. We've also been doing what we can domestically here to support efforts to help American LNG exporters get as much product as they can on the market, while recognizing that there ultimately is going to be a limited amount of supply. I'll defer to the Greek minister to answer the question about the Europeans, but I would just say that the strong U.S. commitment that we have to helping Europe reduce its dependency on Russian gas and meeting their short-term needs with regard to gas doesn't mean that we're no longer committed to the accelerated energy transition. On the contrary, I think you can argue, and many people have made this point, including the minister from Greece, as well as our colleague from Cyprus, that Russia's invasion of Ukraine really highlights the importance to which we all must attach to accelerating the transition to a green economy and renewables, because that's going to ultimately be the single greatest source of our strength. Let me stop there and
Thank you.
Turn it over to the minister.
Thank you. And so, yeah, over to you, Minister Skrekas.
Okay, let me say that for sure, natural gas, first of all, is going to be with us for the next 15, 20, maybe more years, because it is a transitional fuel, because the gas power plants are very flexible, so they can help us increasing the penetration of renewables into our energy mix. Let me say also that here in Greece, we have still some few lignite power plants left that we're going to totally phase out by 2028. So we're going to replace the capacity from coal with natural gas power plants. So in fact, our national plan for energy and climate has estimates that we're going to have more or less the same consumption of natural gas by 2030, maybe a little bit later. And then the natural gas consumption is going to gradually drop until 2050, when we want to be carbon neutral. So natural gas is going to be with us. Let me also say a few data which are quite interesting. A few years ago, we were importing 70%, maybe more, 80% of our consumption from Russia. And we had no imports of LNG from the US. Last year, we managed, in the first month of 2022, we have managed to reduce imports from Russia below 50% of the country's demand. And so we're importing LNG cargos that cover almost 50 to 55% of our demand, and 40% of those LNG cargos are coming from the US. So you can see how fast the world has changed and has in the last 2 or 3 years. And this is going to change even at a faster pace after the war, because as I told you, now we are facing a totally different world. We want by the end of next year to be totally independent from Russian gas. That means that we will increase, of course, the import of LNG. And of course, a lot of this is going to come from the US. Now, what we have to do is we have to proceed to joint purchases with other member states or other countries of our region, southeast of Europe, in order to achieve better prices, lower prices with medium and long-term contracts. So this is our main aim. Of course, we need the necessary infrastructure. We are going to, as I told you, by the end of 2023, we're going to have a second regasification capacity, an offshore LNG terminal north of Greece. We have another one really mature south of Greece, near Athens, with an additional capacity of 5.5 BCMs. So we can indeed export more than 10 to 12 BCMs to the countries which are northern Greece. And of course, the fields that currently exist in the southeast Mediterranean area, of course, can be utilized in order to support us and give us opportunity to diversify from Russian gas and achieve finally the security of supply that we need.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to bring in our two other panelists now and ask them to respond to anything they've heard already and to give their own views on the kind of important questions facing the region. So first, yes, Niki, Tzavela, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Nectaria, for the kind invitation, indeed. Coming back to what was said before, the invasion of Russia in Ukraine has changed the whole energy sector. This is historical. People that deal with energy, they have to know that everything changes. Now, I come back to the LNG question that was said before. America was not an exporting country, so they don't have the necessary infrastructure to export LNG. One problem is this. The other problem is that we are not sure that America can supply the necessary amount of LNG for Europe since they stopped the Keystone XL pipeline. America is producing gas, and this gives them a very good price for domestic heavy industry. Starting to export to Europe, it will create a problem. And Europe is not sure that America can cover what we need. So I see a problem with LNG coming from America. Besides, Europe is not ready with infrastructure to import LNG. So my proposal and what I see for the future is that the best thing is the FSRUs, these units that they can regasify gas. They have not, high cost of investment, and they are flexible in prices because the market is going to float, from now on. Egypt is going to play a very key role in the area because they're moving with FSRUs. Will gas remain in the European market? My speech is on the REPowerEU, the new plan for energy in Europe. This came out 10 days ago. On this, there are two goals: decoupling from Russian fossil fuels and combating climate crisis. Europe sticks to green economy. So what do we do with gas? Because you will see in the Repower Europe that they stick to green economy even in infrastructure. So will gas stay there? Minister Skrekas said it will stay for 15 to 20 years. It will stay for 30 to 40 years. If it is to stay for 15 to 20 years, nobody's going to invest on this because it's heavy investment and nobody's going to put all this money. If Europe wants, to go fast, they have to take into consideration that gas will stay as a transitional energy mixture for at least 30 years.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to let the first two speakers come back in a minute, but first let's hear from Rikard.
Well, I think my observation is that the conversation that we are having today about gas is a better conversation than we have had for a long time. For quite some while, this conversation has had a tendency to be very binary. Is this the silver bullet? Is that the silver bullet? Is it going to be all renewables? Is it going to be gas? Gas is a tricky one because it sits in the middle. It is a hydrocarbon, but it's comparatively very clean hydrocarbon. I think what we're seeing today, driven by a number of developments, is that we're starting to get the necessary nuance in this conversation. And I think with that comes also the realization that actually I don't see much of a difference between the policymakers in the industry with respect to the end game. Of course, we need to get to a more sustainable, low-carbon future. Of course, we need to accelerate the energy transition. We know this. This is an existential threat that we're facing. Where the conversation needs to go now is how do we pragmatically get to that point in the fastest way possible? And I think that there is an increasing realization that gas is essential to get us to that result. Then there is plenty of studies. I saw McKinsey came out with a study only recently where they said actually the global peak of the gas market is going to be about 2037. Then you will see a slow decline of 0.4% until 2050. But basically what this tells us is that we are increasing gas, and then we will have the same level until 2050. In the countries in the Balkan region, there is a lot of countries who are looking at expanding gas in the energy mix, including Greece, because they want to wean themselves off dependency, and they want to get away from traditional coal. So I think gas is absolutely here to stay. What is incumbent on us in the industry is to figure out a way, how do we actually monetize that in a way that safeguards the equitable transition, because we need to think about cost, it is reality. We need to think about energy security, but of course doing that in a way that is also accelerating the end result of that green transition.
Great, so we can carry on this conversation in the room because Mr. Kamian and Minister Skrekas have left now, the connection. And I think this is the conversation that we do want to have. Do you want to come back, Niki, on what you just heard?
Because we have some extra things to say.
Joan, it's Harry.
Oh, hi. You are still here.
I've got a couple minutes before I got to go, but if I wanted to just come in on a couple of the comments that our colleagues mentioned before dropping, if that's okay with you all.
Absolutely, yeah. I thought you'd gone. We thought you'd gone.
I just found the comments by our two panelists quite thoughtful, and maybe just a couple points to add to that. In the discussions that we've been having with our European colleagues in the run-up to, and particularly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it's been clear that our European colleagues, including those in the Eastern Mediterranean, have identified gas as playing an important role now, as well as during the energy transition. And I think that's a role that we recognize and appreciate. And I think when you take a look at the strong commitment that the president made in helping Europe address its short-term needs to help reduce its dependence on Russia, that's embodied in that. I think secondly, we also recognize that gas in of itself will not be sufficient. and that we need to work with colleagues around the world, including the Eastern Mediterranean, to diversify, including away from gas over the long run in order to address our needs. And I think this is a point where I would really like to highlight a thoughtful point that both the minister from Greece as well as Cyprus made about the important role that the electricity interconnectors are playing, not just in terms of regional cooperation, but the recognition that the leaders and the people of the Eastern Mediterranean have of the long-term benefit that those interconnectors are going to play, not just in terms of reducing our collective reliance on fossil fuels, but more importantly, strengthening our respective interdependence, avoiding a scenario where countries are overly reliant on one supplier, and ultimately producing the type of energy that our economies will need to grow over the long run and ultimately achieve some of the climate goals. But Joan, thank you very much for the opportunity to participate. My apologies for needing to drop off, but I just wanted to come in and echo some of the thoughts that I just heard. But thank you very much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you. I'm very glad that you did stay and come back on those points. It was really great to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time for joining the discussion today. And we'll be having it, I'm sure, for the next few years. So hope to speak to you again. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, so yes, I am going to give you some more time to say what you want to say. And I also want to ask the audience if there's any questions as well, and you can come back on those when you give your remarks. So, a question here. Have we got a mic?
Hi, I'm Dan Alpert from Westwood Capital. If Rikard is correct, and we can now, we're now moving beyond a binary discussion, and maybe in polite company we can even talk about things like the East Med pipeline. Is it possible, and if we're really going to start to talk about 30 or 40-year time frames, is it possible to move forward a discussion of a pipeline of some sort, whether it's the original East Med construct or something else, to bring in Eastern Mediterranean gas on a parallel track with the electric interconnectors, so that we, because this is a political issue at the end of the day, and is it possible to sort of apply a political salve to this by advancing both on a parallel track?
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to bring both of you back in. You don't have to respond immediately to that question, but if you want to. Yeah? Rikard?
Well, so let me do this. That's a really good question. So let me take that opportunity and sort of weave this into a little bit of my points to try to bring it all together. Because I think that is exactly the kind of questions that need to be asked. How does this bring together? So I would say this. So if we, for the sake of argument, agree that this cannot be a binary conversation, there is also definitely a role for gas to play. Now, of course, wearing my Greek hat, I would say, well, then Greece is one of the countries in the region that has not really sort of made the efforts to monetize its gas assets yet. And we are talking about potentially significant assets. It's hard to put a number on it, but if we're looking at market values, we're talking about hundreds of billions of gas. Now, today, given everything that is going on, both in terms of the geopolitical situation, but as well how we're progressing the transition agenda and the green agenda, it's pretty obvious that we need to reevaluate in Europe how do we actually address these gas resources. And that is, of course, what the Greek Prime Minister did. The Greek Prime Minister in mid-April actually announced that Greece is now firmly committed to accelerate the exploration and the monetization of the country's gas resources. And he also declared this to be a national strategic priority Now, that announcement was, of course, preceded by quite a lot of in-depth analysis between HHRM, the organization that I represent, and here today with my CEO as well as the Prime Minister's office and the ministry. And it's actually gone quite far already. So already in January and February, and I emphasize those days because they were, of course, preceding the Russian attack on Ukraine. We actually concluded 2 seismic studies already in the Ionian Sea. Now we need to see where that results, but that brings me to your question, sir. What about the infrastructure? There's been a lot of discussion about the infrastructure. Well, those of you who have known me for a while know that infrastructure is very close to my heart. I used to lead the development of the Trans-Adriatic Pipeline infrastructure as well. And as I came into that, there was an awful lot of speculation about this is not going to happen, this is going to happen, this cannot happen. That is my answer to the question of this specific pipeline as well. Pipeline infrastructure brings supply and demand together. We understand now that the demand side of the equation is changing, and we are accepting that the demand side of the equation is changing. We're working very actively with both national and international partners to address the supply side by exploiting the country's own natural resources. Then the debate is, how do we bring that to market? And I think the discussion about that particular pipeline and other particular pipelines, frankly, that doesn't excite me that much, because when we get to the point, we will find a solution to bring this gas to the market. And that could be the old constellation, the new constellation, but I think it's important to not lose track of that aspect. So I think the answer is, when we get to the point that we need to develop that infrastructure, we will develop that infrastructure. And yes, of course, that infrastructure will run in parallel to a lot of other infrastructure, be that electricity infrastructure and renewable infrastructure, because as I wanted to start off with, I think we're getting to the realization that we don't need this or that, but in order for this to be a successful transition, we need all of it.
Okay, thanks. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So, Niki, what
I
do you want to say?
I would like to say a few words about the new European strategy, because it changes everything. Even the pipelines we're talking, they're up in the air. We don't know whether they will be built or not. The repowered Europe sticks on the green economy. Let me go back before I talk about it. We talk about Europe because this is the market for the 3 countries we are talking. 2 of them are members of the European Union, so they have to comply with the rules. And Israel is looking to Europe as a market to export. So we have to see what Europe says. Europe says, I stick to green economy. Every transportation network I'm going to build from now on, it will be retrofitted. It has to be changed. If it is for gas, short time, and it will be retrofitted into carrying, transporting renewable energy. The plan is the following. When we have, a huge pool of projects and something, the goal is there and we have to reach the goal, we need the capital. The capital, it was announced, it will be 210 billion euro that will be allocated to this new plan I'm talking now. 100 billion euro is already being allocated, and it's running into the recovery fund that Europe established to cover all the damages from the coronavirus. So we have 310 billion euro that will be allocated, provided for new infrastructure, new technology. We are looking for new products that will minimize energy consumption, new technology in green economy. Gas is there, but the way I interpret it is short term. Now, we have to take another factor into consideration. We need the capital, we need the legislation. The European Union is changing the legislation. The legislation now, within these 2 months, to make it easier for the players so they can move in and invest. There is the EU-US task force, energy task force, that they are discussing amendments on mutual legislation so they can encourage investment from both sides. These 2 months are crucial. For the ones that they want to invest, they have to turn to these bodies and propose legislation that will help investment. And then we go to the infrastructure. The infrastructure that comes out from the Repower Europe refers to renewables and how we will transport the renewables. Hydrogen seems to take the leading role in this transformation and transition. This is an ambitious plan, but it's going to be implemented. If you're interested in this area, the next 2 months are very crucial for your proposals and whatever. There are the necessary, the eligible bodies from the American side and the European side. The private sector is invited to participate, advising, consulting, etc. And keep in mind that hydrogen seems to be booming in every sector, My closing up, my personal opinion is, this is very ambitious. We cannot end dependency on Russian fossil fuels, unfortunately, very fast. It will be a bumpy way till we find the solution and be self-efficient.
Thanks very much. We are running 15 minutes late, and I know we have to be out of this room definitely before 6 o'clock. So, I'm going to give you 20 seconds, Rikard, just for one point, because we've got a green transition session after the next one, which is on innovation and technology. So we can come back to some of these discussions. But is there one final point? Literally 20 seconds.
Literally 20 seconds. Okay, it's great that we have the plans. There's an old expression saying, no plan withstands contact with the enemy. It's difficult to plan what's going to happen 50 years in advance. So what I would say is, of course we need to have the plan, we need to have the regulation, but we also need to allow for a lot of innovation, because this is how we have managed to build the green side of this equation. Now we also need that innovation to be allowed on the other side and the commercial side. So my last 10 seconds, I'll emphasize that, again, there is no dichotomy here. The two seismic studies I spoke about before, we sat down with the companies and we said, we know that there's concerns about hydrocarbons, but we also see the upside. We need to make sure that we do this to really the highest environmental, energy, and socioeconomic standards. There is no pushback. People understand where we need to get to. So let's also make sure, as we do this planning, that we allow unleashing all this innovation, because I'm absolutely convinced that's how we get there fastest.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thanks both of you. And thanks to all our speakers from this panel.
Thank you, Niki.